Hey, that did work. Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. I forgot y'all can hear me. Um, so basically, I'm talking to myself. I created some timers or some automatic comments, and they actually work. So I was a little excited about that and laughing to myself. But do I have the camera on? No, I don't. Front cam. All right, fam. Here we go. We're back in business. Let me spread some love. Let's see how things working. Here we go. Only one comment. Trying to figure out ways to better automate some of this stuff. So when we get started, I don't have to show up and be trying to do it at the same time. You dig? So glad to have all of you with me. Excited to start our new topic this week. Okay, it work on the YouTubes too. Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. Let me see. Okay. Well, one of them worked. Both of them didn't work. Anyway, man, this will be a little congested. So, family, who am I? I am the Soul Swami. And what we do here is discuss healing in its various forms. Why we do this, try to create a space where we can connect and be with like-minded individuals that are on this path of healing and evolution for themselves. So we want to create a space where that can be shared and learning can be had and support can be had and accountability and all of those things that we need to make sure that we evolve and grow. You can generally catch us every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, and Facebook. Um, I'm trying to figure out a way to get TikTok on there regularly, but generally every time I go live with Streamlabs, they ban me. So I'm trying to have them figure out. They keep telling me you're not banned. I know I'm not banned through your stuff, but you just don't like me using Streamlab. But that's how you can catch us. Generally at the beginning of, hold on, family. All right, so generally at the beginning of every show, we do a little bit of energy work. And this week we are on our solar plexus, which resides right there in your stomach area. That's what you want to think about when you think of solar plexus. Your solar plexus is an energy point for your personal power, your strength, your ego, your confidence, and your self esteem. If you are into color or light therapy, you want to think yellow. That is the color for your solar plexus, hence the yellow tint light that we are using tonight. But you can eat some more yellow foods, wear more yellow clothes, things like that to help you figure out what works well with the solar plexus. If you are into aromatherapy, you want to think of or essential oils. You want to think of lemon, juniper, cedarwood, ginger, lemongrass are all very good for that. As a matter of fact, I use a little combination of ginger and turmeric to yellow my rice when I make yellow rice, which is often because I season my rice all the time. If you are into crystals and gemstones, you want to think about citrine, topaz, tiger's eye, sunstone, pyrite. That's what that is. And yellow jasper are all good examples of stones that help balance out the energy of your solar plexus. Next, we move into a little bit of sound therapy. Tonight, we're just going to use the bowl. We're not going to keep it too complicated for ourselves, but we're going to do a little bowl and a little breath work, and then we'll do some affirmations and get into the show. So during this period, all you got to do is just relax and listen to the sound. Listen, I'm about to change my listen, I changed my phone sound to a bell too. And now that bell goes off. I mean, my notifications, everything is that bell. And I am personally bailed out. I'm not even going to lie. But yeah, thanks for joining. We're doing a little sound therapy right now. We'll move into our breath work, affirmations, and then we'll begin our discussions of the 12 universal laws, starting with Law 1, divine oneness. Next, we will do a breathing exercise for this week. I think we're going to, not I think, but we are going to do triangle breathing. If you are unfamiliar with triangle breathing, that is, you breathe in for 3 seconds, you hold for 3 seconds, and then you release for 3 seconds. But during this time, all you really have to do is just focusing on your breathing and clearing out your energy, and I will keep the count for you. So all you really have to do is just listen to the sound of my voice and follow the guidance that it is giving you. On the count of 3, we will start triangle breathing. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Breathe out 3, 2, 3. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Exhale 3, 2, 3. Inhale 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Exhale 3, 2, 3. Last time, family. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Exhale 3, 2, 3. And as you sit there relaxing and clearing the energy, we want to make sure that we replace that cleared energy with some good energy. And we take this time to affirm our spirit, emotions, mental and physical. So all I need for you to do is repeat these affirmations after me. I am confident. I act with courage. I am a powerful being. I am motivated, persistent, and successful. I honor myself. I am confident. I act with courage. I am a powerful being. I am motivated, persistent, and successful. And I honor myself. Honor myself. All right, family. We can get this party started. Doop, 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 doop. Okay, cool. Boom, 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 boom. And get the move on. Shit, I want to give you all a reminder that our first baby is complete. It's a book you can get. The 7 Spaces of Healing for Yourself on Amazon now. Generally, the link is in the description or it'll show up in the chat in a little bit. But you can get it from Amazon. Do a search for that and this will show up. The 7 Spaces of Love, Healing, Solitude, Trust, Risk, and Accountability. Risk without judgment, accountability, and forgiveness. This is a guide to help you start recognizing what these spaces actually look like, so you can cultivate them within yourself and make sure that you place yourself in these environments to be supportive of your growth. Again, the 7 Spaces of Healing is available now. Get one for yourself. Fantastic. All right, so last week hey Sherry, how you doing? Hey, I'm gonna have a get together. I just finished with the book, not just finished with the book, but of course I'm going to have some sort of get together. I got to figure out how it is, but either way, all that long story to say that I do plan on giving you a signed book, because at some point I'm gonna be on my Riff Raff, right? You know the little rapper Riff Raff. It just kind of lived rent free in my head. People don't give him enough credit. I get why, because he acts like a Riff Raff, but he actually does make interesting music, good music sometimes. But one of the things that he went viral for is saying, my whole goal is to blow up and then act like I don't know nobody. So let me make sure I give you that signed book, because once I blow up, I'm going to act like I don't know nobody. And it's funny. I talked to Makiba today. So, yeah, it must have been a first steps kind of day, because I talked to a couple of people. I talked to Tot and Makiba, so it must have been a reunion tour. A family reunion. Sorry. So last week we wound up having a discussion on how to separate our old identity from our new identity. The ways that we figured out that we'll do that is, 1, we had to recognize what belongs to the old identity, identify those traits, those patterns of behaviors, the stories that we have told ourselves that relate to our old identity. Then we wanted to clarify what the new identity would be. That means the traits. What type of traits will it have? We did that trait map to help us identify our traits. We want to create, understand, or identify what our new values would be that are replacing some of the old values, and then slide into a space where we begin to understand our purpose with our new identity, getting in alignment with our purpose, what that is, right? Then the next thing that we did to help us separate is that we discussed is create a ritual or some sort of transition ceremony for yourself. You got to remember, you're still this old person, even though you're evolving into a new identity. So that person that you learned so much from and that helps you through so many things, that old identity isn't necessarily going away. It just won't be the prioritization. So it's worthy of honoring yourself, honoring your new self, honoring your old self, honoring your present self. And that's why we talk about creating some sort of ritual to honor yourself, or some sort of transition activity. Some examples that we did was write a letter to yourself. That wound up being a very pivotal one for myself, especially because I was one of those kids that used to pass notes in class. I still folded the note how we used to fold those notes. If you were one of those kids, writing letters is one of the things that you like to do. If you wrote letters in classroom, you didn't just do that because you were in school, because there were several people. There were a bunch of people in your class that weren't passing letters at all. It was just you and a couple of people that you did that. But that's where that write a letter for yourself is a great activity that you can do to honor this transition, right? Or some people like to be able to burn things, have fire ceremony, or a fire ceremony, or they bury things. You can bury something that's important. I talked about how I remember when we were kids and Nickelodeon had this whole thing about a time capsule. I forgot they did open it a couple of years ago or so forth, but I can't remember how it went. A time capsule is this idea of a transition ceremony, a sort of ritual to be able to acknowledge a change, right? So Nickelodeon did that. Time capsules, people do that. People do that with a message in a bottle. A message in a bottle is one of these idea transition. I can't get to you. I want to be able to honor this change. And I put it in a bottle and drop it in the ocean and let it do what it does. And then you also want to do things like create new affirmations, new mantra for yourself. Although I talk about the things that live rent free in my head, some of those things are affirmations. I am kind. I am important. I am valuable. I am worthy. That is important because I am is such. It's the shortest incomplete sentence. The shortest complete sentence that we have. I am. But when you understand your connection to the universe and God, you understand that I am. Whatever comes after I am, you become. So we write with that new identity in the transition. We want to create new mantras or new affirmations that wound us, help us reshaping the I am of who we are. Hey Todd, I just kind of talked about you. I said it must have been a First Steps reunion because I talked to Makiba today. I talked to her, and then I just told Sherry I talked to you, and that's the throuple is all together. Whoop, 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 whoop. And then I told her also, because I got to say it to you too. So Todd, you got to get you a book so I can sign it. I'm going to have a little get together so I can sign these books because, you know what I mean? Outside of this, after this, I'm going to be like Riff Raff. And, I had to explain who Riff Raff was, is a rapper who doesn't get enough credit for the good music, which I understand because his freestyles are terrible. You know what I mean? But one thing he said that I just kind of lives rent free in my head is my whole goal is to blow up and then act like I don't know nobody. So, again, for you, go ahead and get that book so I can go ahead and sign it. Because once I blow up, I'm going to act like I don't know nobody. So, again, outside of creating a ritual, identifying what belongs to the old self, identifying what's going to be the new self, create a ritual or transition ceremony to honor that change in yourself. And then once you do this, or not even in specific order, but you want to begin practice living the new identity. What does that mean? You want to speak from the perspective of that new identity. Oh, you on because I'm about to blow up and act like I don't know nobody? Thanks. Hey, listen, I appreciate that. That's exactly why we created this space. We want support, even if it's tomfoolery. You hear me? So, I ain't gonna act brand new anyway. I already been brand new. So you want to start practicing living that identity. What does that mean? Start making decisions. And speak from that voice. How that person. So if you want to be a loving person, a more understanding person, a more forgiving person, you have to start practicing these behaviors. Practice make perfect. Perfect practice makes what? Perfect performance, whatever. What you want to be able to practice this, because it is a new skill set that you are learning, or that you are trying to incorporate into the skill sets that you have. So you got to practice thinking about that self, speaking from that new voice, making decisions that are in alignment with that. So when you have that opportunity to forgive, and that's the new person, one of the new identities you want to have, when that idea is like, nah, I don't want to forgive comes up, you have to talk yourself out of that. You have to start moving yourself into a space of forgiveness, this new identity. You want to live in abundance. You have to start making abundant decisions. You have to not live in that fear of loss, worry of loss. You know what I mean? Then you want to make sure that you surround yourself with people who support your evolution. That means they can see who you're becoming, and they support this new idea. One of the things that we talked about last week is that theory of, which comes from the Bible, is a man is without honor only in his own home. That's what this idea is. You'll wind up being surrounded by people who just knew who you were, and they don't know who you are going to. No, listen. What? You talk about when I blow up? Or you talk about this new identity? You want to make sure that you have these people that are going to support you. Like I said, a man is without honor only in his own home. That's because the people of that home, that hometown, that house, that family, that box that we have lived in prior only know the old person. And when you start becoming that new person, you start looking like you are untrustworthy, right? The unfamiliar, thank you. The unfamiliar looks dangerous to us. So you'll start looking like a dangerous. You can go outside of where you were raised and blow up in ways that you never had. I know personally one way that I experienced that is through my resume. In the state that I grew up in, or where I was started my career, sometimes it would be vastly difficult for me to be able to get opportunities, even though I had the qualifications, the certifications, I had all the occasions that you necessarily needed. But I'd send that same resume to a place out of state, and they'd be like, yo, literally, even when I went to my master's program, I called them, was like, hey, I'm thinking about going to your school. And the chair of the department almost passed out. She was like, listen, we never have this happen. People like you don't just call us. People with your skills, they don't just call it. We have to go find them and recruit them. So that's what that idea is. Expand yourself out of the box that you used to live in, so that you can start finding people that support the new you, the evolution of you, right? One of the most important things that we want to understand about this separation of old and new is it's not really a separation, right? It is more of an integration. That's the next thing. You want to integrate, don't erase. The fear that people have is when they move from this old identity that they're putting it all down, and they won't know who they are once they do that. But the thing about that is you're not letting go of everything. You plan to keep the things that are beneficial to your new identity as well. So you are integrating the key parts of old self with this new identity that will be beneficial still. So for example, if your old self was determined, your new self is going to need that. If your old self was disciplined, Your new self is going to still need that discipline. So as much as we're talking about a separation, it's really an integration where the two become a new one, right? That's where this idea applies in a lot of things outside of not just marriage. The two becomes one, right? Right. Okay. So that was the review of last week. That's that new identity separating it for us. Honestly, I think that will probably be the next book that we write. It's definitely going to be a lot of information. It's going to require, well, the first book was just an opportunity to allow us to understand the process of creating a book. The next one is going to be more in the traditional idea of how we see a book as far as the amount of information, right? The amount of information. So now, this week, we are discussing the 12 universal laws. Well, we won't do them all this week, right? But we are beginning our discussions of the 12 universal laws. Why are we doing the 12 universal laws? Because initially we were going to do the law of attraction, right? But as I began studying and thinking about should I do the 7 laws of attraction, I really recognized that the law of attraction is one of 12 universal laws, right? So instead of just talking about the laws of attraction, so we can start understanding how we attract, move from that space of projecting our internal thoughts to attracting what we need, making sure our internal thoughts reflect what we want our external to look like. Since the law of attraction is just one of those laws, I felt as though having a discussion about the 12 universal laws would be beneficial. So what are these laws? What are the 12 universal laws? They are the 12 principles that govern life and the universe. Generally, it's metaphysical ideas, or sometimes it's used in philosophical, and is used in development or manifestation practices, right? What's the difference, right? What does this mean? Metaphysical, right? So generally, when we think about this idea of first, I did want to say this. I always been looking for an opportunity to use this because I heard it so many, well, not a bunch of times. I heard it on Boondocks, and then I heard it from the actual government official who said it, and I forgot his name. But you don't get an opportunity to use this, right? So this is the difference. Physical science studies that which is observable, that which we can see, touch, things like that. This is science of the physical. They tell us that when we were in school, we always limited it down to science. But when we take classes through our matriculation through high school or even college, they break it up. They let you know that these are the physical sciences. We were studying the physical sciences, right? The things that that are easily observable. Well, I won't say easily observable, because it's not always easily observable, but it is the events or the things in life that are observable or that we can actually see, right? The metaphysical winds up being the science of the unobservable that we don't always be able to see. The unification between, like this idea of the divine oneness, how we're all connected. That is hard to, there is no tangible evidence beside of our connection outside of DNA. You know what I mean? That's observable, but DNA carries an energy, but we can't always observe that. So the metaphysical winds up being a science of the unobservable, the abstract sciences, right? So the saying that I wanted to use was the difference between this is the reason why they're both important is because we have known knowns. That means we have some things that we know, and we know them. We have known unknowns. That means we have some things that we know exist. We just don't really know about them. You know what I mean? So we have to do a little bit of more research in them. And then we have the unknown unknowns. There are things that exist that we know nothing about, nor do we have any idea that it exists, right? You can think about this on a smaller scale when you think about food, right? I remember the first time I had Mexican food. I had no idea that existed. Up until that point as a child, you think everybody eats what you eat. But different cultures have different things that they hold valuable, different stories that they tell, even though some of these stories have very familiar looks, even though some of the food have very familiar looks, very ingredients that show the interconnectedness. But we did not know that that existed until we knew it existed. You're like, wow, I didn't know that actually existed until you found out it existed, right? So that's one of the things why we say exposure is one of the most important ingredients for children, right? The reason why a lot of our children are behind is because of lack of exposure. They don't even know these things exist in the world, right? There are some children who, because it never snows where they live, they don't even know snow exists, right? And there are some children who live in snow more times than they don't, right? So exposure. This also ties into this idea of as above, so below, right? So what exists externally, what we see externally is above, also exists internally inside of us. What we see above, the heavens above, and the ground below exist, right? So what's above, also below. What's below, also above. It's ironic because it winds up being this idea. There's an idea that the ocean is below us and above us, right? And overall, you initially be like, no, because I'm walking through air. But when you pause and you think about it, air has so much water in it. We see water fall from the sky, right? So generally every day, this is also where that idea of we came from fish. We live in a space that is more water than we really account for. Because when we talk about how much the earth is covered by water, we just talk about the water surrounding land masses. But we know we measure water in the air. Sometimes we feel it through humidity, right? That is a perfect example. There's water that exists below us, and there's water that exists above us. This is the idea that the external does not exist without the internal. The internal does not exist without the external, and there is an even exchange. There's a medium where they can intersect or they can communicate with each other and affect outcomes of each other, right? So if you're feeling sad before you take a test, that test is an external event. But your internal emotions may affect on how you do on that test, right? So the external does not exist without the internal, right? Examples of this is also alchemy is an example of this metaphysical science or this idea of below. So the external, that's why people think that their external can affect physical masses to create a new thing. That's what alchemy is. Using my external energy to be able to change external things, right? Astrology is this idea where the movement of the stars, the alignment of the stars wind up having an internal effect on our body. One of the ways that we say this, we see that this is possible through the moon's attraction power on the ocean. We have high and low tide, right? So it's easy to assume that us made of 80-90% of water as human beings are also affected by this external energy because we have so much water, and the moon directly affects tides, the effects of water, right? And then, of course, this idea comes into personal development. This is where we're talking about our spiritual healing, our alignment, our embodiment of the energy, trying to make sure that we're living in a space that is authentic to who we are and ourselves, right? Oh, God, excuse me. I must be still growing. I got the hiccups. So, what is the first law of the 12 universal laws? The first law is the law of divine oneness. What does that mean? Everything in the universe, everything under God's hand, everything seen and unseen is interconnected. Every thought, every action, every event influences something else, right? That's like this idea of the butterfly effect. A butterfly can flap its wings on one side of the earth, and create a monsoon or a tsunami on another one, on the other side. So our small influences affect every thought influences something else. The interconnectedness. What is that is? It shows us that this idea of separation that we have is an illusion. So although we might be contained in individual boxes, our individual box affects the greater good. This is how sometimes within our family we think that our happiness, our energy affects the whole of the family. And in some aspect that is true, right? Or if we think about nurture and nature, right? Nurture winds up being this idea of interconnectedness. It's because the effect that I do, how I treat my children, how I treat the people around them, how I treat the people I interact with, how I act in my relationships, that affects the health of these interactions, these events, these people, these things, even on a larger scale. You know what I mean? So it may just be looking at it on small scale, but on a larger scale, the number of relationships we have in our community affects the overall health of the community. Period. So if marriage rates are 20% or below, that affects the overall health of the community. Even though I may not be married, my individual decision affects the overall health of the community. Me not being married affects how the community functions as a whole. Even though that's a decision for my own life, it does reflect in the community on what we hold valuable, what is important to us, how do we achieve these goals that we set for ourselves. It removes that illusion that separation is real, right? Everything is a part of the universal consciousness. Every plant, every thought, every life matter, animal, all of that thing, even like again, the seen and the unseen are all a part of the universal consciousness. That universal knowledge that we tap in through prayer, through meditation, through interaction with other human beings and life forces. That shows the interconnectedness. That is the idea that what you think or feel ripples outward and affects the world, affects what you see. So we talked about how your subconscious projects 90 or creates 90% of your reality, right? So the feelings that you hold within yourself, the feelings that you don't think about, the feelings and thoughts that you don't think about, you don't process, they are projecting and creating a reality to you. And if you wonder, what do you really think? Look at your reality. Is it matching what you want to think, right? If you talk about that you want to live in abundance, is your life reflecting abundance? And if it's not, take some time and reevaluate what you really think. Bring to consciousness those unconscious feelings and desires so that you can reshape them and align yourself. We move away that what you think affects the whole, right? This is that idea also where we talk about the temple of our Father is within, right? So biblically speaking or spiritually speaking, we say that God, the God above, also resides below. The below is our internal. So when we want to speak to God or learn more about God, it's as easy as learning more about ourselves. If we want to learn more about the universe and how to navigate that, to have a stronger relationship with that around us, we do that by learning more about ourselves. What does that mean? What does that mean? Right? I also learned, and I talked about this a bunch, right? Because it was one of the first things that kind of blew my mind. In science, we learn the basic building blocks of life. What does that mean? Every single thing that we see and don't see is created off of these basic chemicals. And I said it, chanops. Everything living and unliving, because they do carbon dating to date how old things that are no longer seen as living, vibrating on a living plane, but they still can date how long they have existed. It's chinops. I say chinops because that was my way of remembering, not my onomatopoeia, but my mnemonic device, chinops. That is carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. This desk that I'm sitting at has these basic chemicals. This internet that we use, this camera that I use, the food we eat, our internal organisms, the foundations of these things are these basic chemicals. That means the same things that the stars are made of, we are also made of. So it is easier for us to see that direct connection and that universal interconnectedness. If the same things that make up the stars that we talk about as stardust also makes up me, then why are we not connected? We are. That is that universal connection. Those are the basic building blocks of life. Chinops: carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus. The temple of our Father is within. That is our direct connection to God and our link to the universal interconnectedness, right? Now, it's funny because last week on the show, I wound up, one of the brothers on the show wound up bringing up unity, right? See, this law of divine oneness proves that there is unity, right? There is unity beyond physical perception, right? So sometimes we like to gauge unity based on what we see. But we have to understand things exist that we don't see. And there is unity within that energy between what we do see and what we don't see. The fact that we all are made by the same basic building blocks and the same chemicals show that there are unity. The fact that emotions affect me and you, that is unity within the human experience. Even animals experience these things, although they may not vocalize it the same way or express their feelings the same way as humans. Sometimes they do. I was thinking about earlier today, you ever catch your dog tearing up your furniture and you look at your dog while he's tearing up your furniture, that dog looks back at you like I know I did wrong and then tries to play it off, and it's a dog. And I don't speak dog. Ironically, they can understand human. They speak whatever language we speak, but we don't speak dog at all, right? So that is the unity beyond physical perception, beyond just looking at the physical. That means there's a unity in thought. The fact that we're all here in this space right now shows unity of thought. We all want to heal or evolve our emotion, our mental, and our physical bodies. We want to do that. And so we are here because that unity in thought, that connecting energy, right? And this idea of separation needs to be broken down, because when we don't recognize that we are interconnected, we think that we exist in a vacuum outside of this unity or this connection that we all have, but we do not. What we do does affect someone else. Our choices do affect someone else. They always do, even though other people may not be responsible for these choices or decisions. They are affected by it, right? What are the implications of this? What does this mean? What does this mean? It means that your thoughts matter, right? Because they influence the whole. The way you think influences the life you live, the experiences you have. So, for example, if I think negatively about relationships, about partners, women, men, whatever the case may be, then that affects the experience I have with these people when I have to interact with them. If I think negatively about dogs or cats, that affects the experience I have with them. As I've said 1,000 times, the universe knows us no obligation to prove us wrong. It has more of a tendency to prove us right. Why? Because what we think shapes and creates our reality, right? So your thoughts matter. They influence the whole, not just your thoughts, your emotions, which we already talked about, are natural, but the feelings, the stories that we create from these emotions, they also affect what we wind up happening, right? I wrote down this example of not a role model. These are the people that are trying to convince to themselves that their thoughts, their actions don't matter. It only affects themselves. But no, if you are put in a place to be seen by millions of people, hundreds of people, 50s of people, tens of people, then you have some responsibility to recognize that what you say, what you do does affect the whole, because people are looking at you. Whether you want to accept that responsibility or not, it's not based on what you are willing to accept. It's just based on what is. If you are in this position, that comes with the position. It comes with the title. To whom much is given, much is expected. That's the bottom line. It comes with that energy, right? It comes with it. The other thing that we want to think about is what words kind of embody this idea of the universal, the divine oneness. We want to think like compassion is a word that symbolizes divine oneness. Empathy and kindness influence the whole, or the lack of empathy, compassion, and kindness influences the whole. We can tell people who did not experience that in childhood because they struggle to give that in adulthood, or they struggle to even receive it in adulthood. A lot of times we think that when people don't get it in childhood, or they haven't had it in those early experiences, they go out into this world and they don't give it. Some of them learn to give it, but they still struggle to receive it, right? So we learn that our thoughts, our actions affect the whole, right? And the words that we want to start thinking about as we embody this new alignment, or this new understanding of divine oneness, is compassion, empathy, and kindness. They are guaranteed to influence the whole. Now, this idea of the universal oneness has connections to physical science. Generally, a lot of these metaphysical ideas are based off physical science ideas, because the concepts are applicable to the seen and the unseen. So what things in physical science have connections? Where's this idea of the divine oneness built off of? Right? It is built off this idea of quantum entanglement, right? Generally, quantum entanglement is talking about how particles interact with each other, but we understand as human life forms, we are only created of particles, right? Thoughts and ideas create electrical currents and all those things within our body, which are particles. So we function on a particle level, right? So it is about how particles are interconnected, or can be connected across distances, and can influence other particles, right? I talked about the synapse, the connecting that we have with all things in life are made from these ingredients, but something that we can apply to our everyday life is something like a laugh or a smile. We say that laughs are contagious. Smiles are contagious. You ever had a baby just look at you and start smiling? What is your natural reaction? To smile back. That is that idea of quantum entanglement. On a particle level, we are feeling some connection to that baby without words, beyond words, that we know. Because now I've had people, man, no lie. I remember one time I was riding on this bus, little school bus, university bus, campus bus, whatever it is, right? And I'm on the phone with one of my friends, and one of our ideas, one of our joys was to try to get the other person to break character. So where they're in a professional situation, or they're in some situation where they have to be professional, whatever that means, we call and show up and try to make them unprofessional. So I'm on this bus full of students. So I'm trying to seem like a sensible student, and they're doing their best to make me seem like I'm not a sensible student at all. They're trying to move me from my student identity to my personal at home in the street identity. And I'm laughing. And I recall this girl sitting behind me talking to her. She was like, oh my God, he's laughing so hard. I want to laugh too. She was so disappointed because she had no idea what I was laughing at, and that made me laugh more. That is that idea of quantum entanglement. She can feel the energy, even though she may not know what it is. But she's like, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that. It is connected to this idea of the unified field theory, which is a physics idea. And that is all forces or particles are part of one underlying reality, right? That means all the forces or particles that we see are part of the one reality that we see, right? That what is observable, right? Now, there are many discussions about different multiple realities that exist, but that's not what this is about. Within any one of those realities, all the particles, all the things that exist in that reality are on one reality. So they don't exist outside of that reality. Now, they may exist in another reality, but it'll be a little bit different, right? There will be some differences. That is that unified field theory. And then one of the more important things that is connected to this idea of the universal, the law of divine oneness, is the observer effect. This is the physical science foundation of that. What is the observer effect? It is observing this can influence the outcome. Me seeing it can change how it behaves or how it reacts, right? I use the example of children and pets. Kids and pets, you catch them, they see you. You know, we always have learned that children have situational behaviors. They behave certain ways with certain people. That's what this is. The observer effect depends on who's watching them, will affect how they behave, right? So we can say if the school teacher's watching them, they get one kid. The father's watching them, they get one kid. Their mother's watching them, they get one kid. Grandma's watching them, they get one kid. Aunt and uncle, they watch them, they get one kid. Now, there may be some overlap, but there will be differences based on the observer, on who is looking at them, right? Right. And then that ties into this idea of the observer effect. The observer effect ties into this idea what I just stated. The universe has no obligation to prove you wrong, right? Your inherent energy, your inherent intention is going to be want to prove right. So you are going to observe in a way that you wanted to be right. So your observations will support your ideas. That is the observer effect. Your observation of these behaviors will affect that. If I am looking at you from a perspective of I don't like you, that is going to affect how you interact. Now, you may be like, I don't care what this person thinks, or you might care. You may not even be able to acknowledge, but that energy there, even if you are unable to label that energy as what it is, you are going to be affected by observation, right? And this even breaks down to particles and atoms. What we said, all these particles exist. The observation of these particles are affected by us looking at them, by us seeing them, period. That is the observer effect in this idea of the universal oneness, the law of universal oneness. Now, how is this applicable to my life? How is this interconnected of everything? All my thoughts matter. How does this fit into my everyday world? How does it affect my life, right? One way it does that is by perspectives, right? We be conscious of our perspectives. We are learning that perspectives are the tools that we use to navigate life. So that means your thoughts can influence, right? So in that time, we want to apply things like empathy and kindness. Because when we apply those towards others, because of this universal one connected, that will be applied towards us. If we give forgiveness to others, then forgiveness will be given to us, right? If we expect accountability of others, then that accountability will be expected of us. Ironically, the other day I was listening to NPR. I'd listen to NPR more times than I like to care. They just have a couple of shows. I love Away with Words. I love Away with Words because I find so much people just call in and they talk about some cliche saying that they heard growing up, like good googly moogly. Where does good googly moogly come from? I know we used to say that all the time, good googly moogly, but there is an origin to it. So I like Away with Words, and then I always like their little cooking shows where they're talking about recipes and stuff like that. I don't know. I just love it. Even though I've never made cranberry sauce from scratch, I heard them talk about cranberry sauce from scratch for 20 minutes. But I was watching NPR and they were talking about this idea of giving, right? And what giving does. The ironic thing about giving is those receptors that are activated when you give to someone, like somebody receives a gift, are also activated in the giver. That is the universal connectedness. The fact that I am giving, the energy, the same receptors that are activated when you receive something that you love and you want are the same receptors that are activated in the person who is giving that. So there's a mutual benefit and exchange for applying kindness, forgiveness, empathy towards life. Because we get that back and it wells us up. It heals us up. It moves away from that space of dis-ease into a space of ease and comfort and contentment, right? All good words, right? Also, we want to be mindful of our decisions now that we understand that even the smallest decision affects some greater, right? So we want to recognize if our decisions are in alignment with the greater good, right? Does our behaviors help the greater good? Me wanting to be an educator, me wanting to be a community activist or whatever, that winds up helping the greater good. Me wanting to be an educator, that's good for me. I get a paycheck. I get to do something I like, but I also get to change the mind state and lives of those that will come after me and interact with some of those that came before me and hopefully help them change and adjust some too, right? That is the greater good. That helps the greater good. So be mindful of your decisions and ask yourself, are they in alignment with the greater good, right? These decision makings and asking yourself, create these questions, create that internal harmony, right? And we haven't really talked about harmony, but what we want to understand that harmony is a brick in the foundation of happiness, right? That's why we need harmony. And harmony is from reciprocity, that even exchange, right? So it is a foundation, a brick in the foundation of happiness. The next thing you don't want to do, how is this applicable in your life and understanding the law of divine oneness, is that you don't want to isolate yourself. We need that connected energy. We need that supportive environment. We talked about how solitude is one of the spaces of healing, but solitude is just a tool, and we don't want to use solitude and slide into isolation. We need the interconnectedness. We need the energy around us so people can pour back into us and we can give out that even exchange. So we want to find groups of people who feel like us, like the soul family. We are all connected through our own wants of wanting to evolve and be the best version of ourselves, the most authentic version of ourselves. This is a perfect example of that community that keeps us not isolated. You want to be able to experience time in nature, right? Going outside, touching the trees, feeling the wind blow across your screen, across your skin, right? All of those things help to create a space of harmony and internal contentment because you interact with it, right? You want to make sure that you, even if you get into things like spending time with animals, if that's your thing, you finna. I will always say barely the best, the most effective tool that I saw when I worked with children with reactive attachment disorder was pet therapy. The medication didn't work because they still had the issues. The environment, even though it was very structured, we still had issues with them kids all the time. The only time we never had issues is when the pet showed up. And it was ironic because they would say that these children with reactive attachment disorder struggle to make relationships with adults. I disagree, but I really had no proof. The outside of when the animals show up. Because when those animals showed up, you can tell those kids had no problem in forming relationships with animals that they deemed animals worthy of care. And that's very important. Worthy of care, because their judgment came in worthy of care, right? So those are examples. Then you want to make sure you manifest with alignment. That means you speak, you think, you project, you attract, you manifest with alignment. That means you don't speak on abundance and then worry about having enough, right? That is not manifest with alignment. You manifest with alignment. I am abundant. And then you live within the means of that abundance, right? That does not mean go above and beyond your means, because your abundance is in a space, right? Now you can get more and your abundance and it can expand, but during the space that you are in, you live within that abundance. You share what you can within your abundance. That's what that is. You want to make sure that you know that your intentions matter, right? The road to hell may be paved with good intentions, but that saying is letting you know that your intentions matter. They can create a heaven or a hell for self and other individuals. Your intentions, the why you are doing this, what is your purpose, the reason why you are making these decisions or going down this path, it is important. Intentions matter, right? This is how you manifest with alignment. Positive thought mixed with inspired action create outcomes that are beneficial to the whole. That is, faith without works is dead. Positive thoughts, faith, inspired action, work, creates good outcomes for the whole, right? That's how you manifest with alignment. That is how you wind up. That is how this is applicable to your life. The last way that it is applicable to your life is this understanding that you are not alone. You do not exist in a vacuum by yourself. This understanding reduces stress. You can breathe a sigh of relief. I deal with this dynamic a lot within my professional realm because a lot of people are going through struggles. A lot of organizations wind up going through struggles and different types of things. And because they are an organization by themselves, they think they are alone in the struggle that they are experiencing. But then we wind up creating spaces where we bring leaders together and have leaders be able to have conversations about their experiences and how they handle them, how they navigate them, ask questions. It helps the whole recognize that we are not alone. So there is stress reduction in recognizing that you are not alone, right? We do this by practicing gratitude. Not only are we practicing this new identity, but we are practicing the tools that come along with this new identity, and gratitude is one. That helps reduce stress. Being thankful for what you have, focusing on the good that you have, recognizing that your intentions matter, all of those things are tools to help reduce stress, the stress that you are interacting with, the stress that you are dealing with, right? Excuse me, family. So that is our topic for this week. We discussed the law of divine oneness. Next week we will move up. Scratch. Next week we probably won't have a show. We'll see how it goes. I doubt it. I'm getting some wisdom teeth pulled. So on Monday, so I doubt I'm going to be ready to talk for an hour straight on Tuesday. But we'll see how it goes. We might wind up skipping that. I don't think Thursday is Christmas, and I want to make sure that people have the space to be able to enjoy their family and all of that stuff. So I don't think we'll be doing book club this week. So I will be looking forward to working with you all. Again, we'll pick up in this in the new year. We're going to have a fantastic new year. Again, I will put up some posts or some reminders that we won't have this show next week, but we will have it the week after and going forward. Again, we're going to take a week break off to be able to get ourselves in alignment. Enjoy that space of healing that is solitude to help reshape our ideas and make some changes on how we want to go forward in 2026. Also, I want to say that we are going to start having a raffle. So keep your eyes open for a raffle. This is going to be a raffle for a signed copy of the 7 Spaces of Healing, right? The 7 Spaces of Healing. It's going to be a signed copy of that. Through a drawing. So for the most part, we're going to ask a couple of questions. Your answer to the question, your correct answer to the questions will put you in for the drawing to get a free signed copy of the 7 Spaces of Healing. So look forward to that. That's going to come out within the next week. I hope I get a lot of opportunity. I mean, a lot of people be able to join in. Just take a guess. I'm going to try to make it simple. Maybe. We'll see. One of the questions will probably be a little bit difficult, but they're going to be a little bit specific about this program. And you're going to have to do a little work. You know what I mean? Unless you've been a follower from day one where you might just know at the top of your head. Again, family, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy. I appreciate your support as always. I hope you have a fantastic holiday. Thanks for joining, Kayla. Thanks for joining, Tasha. I hope you have a fantastic holiday. I hope you all got something for the first universal law, the law of divine oneness, that we are connected divinely, all made from the same things. Enjoy your holiday. I look forward to seeing you in the new year. Thank you, family, for all your support. And with that, peace and gratitude.